Hey friends, welcome back to the Random Theory Podcast. I am so psyched to have today's guest. Today we have TikToker, climate communicator, and impact producer Alex Hauraus with us in the studio to talk about sustainability, his conservation efforts, and living a minimalistic life on the road. Ow. Shout out to my homie. Today, I am very excited to share Alex with you all because he is somebody that just has this truly infectious spirit of caring about people around him and the world around him. So I hope you enjoy our conversation today. Without further ado, Alex Hauraus.
It's good to be here, guys. Thanks for having me on the show, Grace.
Of course. I'm so glad you could roll through in your house and join us here in Utah.
Yeah, happy to.
It's been great. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you do what you do and what you do. Because we just got to hop into this because it's so amazing.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I live on the road full time. I'm a full-time digital nomad and have the stated mission and passion of encouraging people to fall in love with the outdoors and take action to protect it. And that's been going on for a long time. It started when I was in high school and was lucky enough to take a class on environmental science and learn about the climate crisis. And I knew that I wanted my career to be for a purpose greater than myself. And
I love that.
Being outdoorsy and understanding that the climate crisis affects pretty much every other social, economic, and environmental issue. Since it supersedes all of them, that's the thing that I want to contribute to. And so since then, I went to school to get a bachelor's in environmental studies and post my undergrad degree, work as many different positions and jobs as I could to get a diverse and very widespread understanding of the many different ways in which one can communicate for environmental issues.
So one of my favorite things that you shared with me was working, and I think this is one of the cool experiences that you shared, was working at a bear sanctuary.
Yes. Yeah. I worked at the Vince Schutte Wildlife Sanctuary in northern Minnesota, and spent a little bit of time volunteering there, taking care of black bears and educating the public on their behavior and interactions and lives and just what incredible creatures they are. They're hands down my favorite animal.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
So for you, what was a pivotal moment in your life and in your career that just really ignited your curiosity for the world around you with science? I'm sure there's so many things just
there
churning.
Are. It's there. I mean, the thing about it is that every single day there's a new answer to that, right? It's science is everywhere, and there are so many different interconnected aspects of every single ecosystem. And I think that a lot of people think that nature and wilderness and stuff like that is out there somewhere. You have to leave town, you have to go somewhere else, you have to get to a spot devoid of humanity to experience true nature. But that's not true. I mean, there's millions of leaves in an average neighborhood, and those in and of themselves are their own stories and intricacies and things that are fascinating to learn about. So there's constantly new answers to that question. But what initially got me fascinated was honestly just taking little mini hikes with my dad when I was a boy. He got me into scouts. And so the two of us would go out to forests and other things. And sometimes friends would be there and other times it'd be just us. But he was the person that taught me to both respect, just to respect both the fragility and ferocity of nature. And so being able to understand that it's precious and it's beautiful and it's something to be treasured, but also if we treat it the wrong way can absolutely deck us in thousands, millions of ways, is a very, very careful, beautiful balance. And so he taking me on those mini trips is what really got me into it. And then the academic understanding just kind of poured forth from that passion.
I love that. And I love that you talked about how delicate our earth really is. I mean, if one thing is out of whack, everything kind of falls down the chain, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So with that, what moment was it where you were just I'm going to live on the road?
Yeah, it's funny. So all of those past experiences led into the idea of becoming a better digital communicator, right? Wanting to build a digital presence and a digital community that could have tangible real world impact. And so I was actually in the process of finding out what other job to take to make me better at doing that eventually.
Yeah.
And so I moved out to Colorado to get plugged in a nonprofit world at the start of last year in January, and then picked up a part-time job, started applying places, and then 2 weeks later, COVID happened and the lockdown happened, and I got let go, and so did everyone else that I was working with. No one was hiring.
Yeah.
And actually a really good friend of mine encouraged me to start a Patreon. And so I did. And I had been planning the idea of going on the road for a while, because it's an awesome adventure. It's fun. Like, I just want to do that.
Sensational.
But also strategically, it's like, this will give me the opportunity to spend 100% of my time in the backcountry showing people the world that I love and encouraging them to get out into it, and constantly reminding them that that's something that you have to do every day, no matter where you are. So it became this like perfect moment where, since I started the Patreon and could cover car payments with that, I could pick up a car for the first time on my own dime, which was crazy. And that made sense strategically for my career too, because it meant I didn't have to worry about paying for rent. I could focus 100% on building the reputation, the career, and practicing digital communication in the outdoor space. I made the decision to do that a little over a year ago, but I actually started on the road about 10 months ago now, and I've been doing it ever since. Yeah, it really worked out.
That's awesome. I love that so much. And just like being able to experience the backcountry with you was so special, because I mean, you've got this whole setup. I mean, we like you open up the Subi. You literally open up the back of it and you pull out this plywood kitchen, and it's just like so beautifully constructed to live this beautiful minimalistic life. And just to see the things that you have seen and experienced just blow my mind. I love it so much.
I'm super thankful for it. And it's a team effort, right? I mean, the entire thing is funded by a community. Like, I couldn't build that myself.
Of course.
A friend of mine and I built it together with their like workshop tools.
Yeah.
And so it's just such a testament to how like no one of us is going at it completely alone. And it's amazing what can happen when you work together, and being able to create something like that gets out into these crazy, beautiful places is like, I'm so, so thankful.
Okay, so to be a conservationist, how did that start for you? Obviously, you went to school to study the earth and nature and all the beautiful things, but how did this kind of path open in front of you? Yeah,
so I knew when I took that initial class that I wanted to do environmental work. What that actually looked like this career it existed, but it didn't really, like, it's kind of.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, you're a creator, you get it. Like, there's no direct path. What it looked like for me was like, I know I want this academic credibility,
for sure,
so I need to get the degree for the science aspect of it. But the storytelling aspect of it is something that everyone does uniquely, and is something that comes about, like, the opportunities that come with that are completely unique to each individual. No one person has the same ones, and that's a beautiful thing, but it also makes it hard to find a path, because you just kind of have to forge your own. Which thankfully you have experience with, building trails out in the wilderness. Yeah, exactly. I used to build backcountry trails in Utah with the AmeriCorps. It blows my mind that we are the exact same age, but I feel like you have so much more life experience just being out in nature and like throwing yourself into these organizations and just giving it your all and your whole heart and just doing everything that it took to be who you are today. Oh, well, that's all it takes. I mean, like, all it takes. That's what it takes. Like, what I was going to say is, like, this ties perfectly into, it's not a sidebar, what we were going to talk about. This is perfect. So, like, yeah, there was the academic thing, but understanding storytelling happened on its own. And so I did photography and writing and stuff outside of school and publishing things on social media and Instagram. But the reason I took so many different jobs and positions and gave them my all, comes from a life approach called the Tarzan Method. Have you heard of it? No. Share with all of us, please. The Tarzan Method, I learned about it back in the day from Casey Neistat. Okay. When he was like crushing it on YouTube, on like the daily vlogging vibe. I don't know if he coined it or if he came up with it from somewhere, but basically what it is we're here, right, at point A.
Yep.
And the place that we want to be is point B. And it's all the way over there and we can see it. Like, we can imagine it.
Yeah.
But the path to get there is very wayward, and it's through this jungle, and there's lots of turns and unexpected happenings. And there's no direct beeline path to whatever your aspiration is. But there are vines hanging nearby, and you can grab one and you can swing. And it's possible that that vine might take you a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. It won't go exactly straight at what it is that you're trying to do, but none of them will. So it's better to grab a vine close to you and swing and learn from it and move a little bit closer. Even if you're moving 50 yards to the left, it's good to get 4 yards closer to your goal. And when you keep doing that and keep doing that, keep going left and right and back and forth and all these different like positions and jobs and experiences and like anything that helps you get a little closer to that, it's worth it, because eventually you will get there. And it also presents opportunity to get to a new place with a different perspective and maybe see another goal you hadn't realized.
Wow.
That then becomes your point B. And so you just take another vine close to you and swing. It's always worth it. There's never a perfect opportunity.
Oh, I love that so much. From now on, like, that is locked in my brain.
Right?
Like, that's so beautiful to basically know that no path that you go down or whatever vine you grab is leading you down the wrong direction. It's all leading you to that point B. Oh, that was so great. I needed that in my life. I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah, happy to. It's really relaxing.
Yes.
Because it takes the pressure off of finding the perfect answer and being like, anything that I could do will help me in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that so much. How have you found the best way to be a voice for nature? Because I know I try my best, and I'm still working on my science communication of being an ally to our environment in the world that we live in. And I highly look up to you in everything that you do. Like, sincerely from the bottom of my heart, it makes me beam knowing that someone is out there taking care of our earth and doing the best that they can to take care of our earth. So how can people be an ally and a voice for nature, and how have you done it?
Well, first, thank you. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that it's nice because I'm definitely not the only person doing it, and there have been like literally millions of people doing it for years, and that's really, really encouraging, and something I think that people that want to get more involved in that can lean on, to know that the environmental field and conservation and the fight against climate change and environmental justice, like all of these things are community efforts. It's like the most inherently cooperative field on earth. And that's really special. I think that the best place for people to start in terms of becoming a voice for nature is first understanding that it's interconnected to us.
So interconnected. And
knowing, that like sustainability is environmental, but it's also social. And it's also economic. And a sustainable society is one in which everyone, like environmental beings included, animals and plants, can have a life for themselves where it's like genuinely equitable and no one is like getting passed off economically, socially, environmentally. And so what that looks like is different for every single place on Earth. So the best thing that I recommend after understanding that interconnectedness is to just walk outside and start observing wherever it is that you live and considering it, right? Like, I mean, that's the first part of the scientific process, like hypothesizing. Yep. So you think like, where did these trees come from? Like, were they planted? Have they been here since before people were here? If so, why? And just starting to understand like what that relationship is like. Where does the water go when it enters the sewer? Why is it hotter this year than last year? Why hasn't there been rain in a while? Like, I remember when I was like 7, we got like storms all the time, and like the summer was rather temperate. Like, what happened to that? Like making observations and things like that. Or even in some neighborhoods, right? Like, why is there soot on my garage door? Like things like that, like asking just observing and wondering what goes on here and figuring out the source of those like instances and happenings and just trying to answer those questions.
Of course.
And then as you hunt down the tangible, factual answers to those questions, you'll start finding problems. You'll find a lot of beautiful things too. The beautiful things that you learn about can help you better articulate the problems that you learn about and motivate people to take action to solve whatever problems are unique to your community. So if it's a water issue, there you go. Like, take a stand on that. If it's something else, take a stand on that, like whatever it may be. But it starts with observing and caring.
I think what I love the most, it does start with that observation and that care. Something that I really appreciate you saying was it's in your community. It doesn't have to be the polar bears. It doesn't have to be the penguins. It doesn't have to be the whale. It's your community.
100%. And I think it's funny because like the most recent campaign that I worked on was the Arctic Refuge, which is very far away.
Yes.
But I think that there has been a great, not maybe misstep, but missed opportunity by the environmental movement trying to emphasize the far away epic things.
Yes.
Like, it's good to do that from time to time, but I think if you're able to articulate and teach people how these issues actually connect at home and how they'll impact the average person's life, then it becomes something that everyone is passionate about instead of just, the environmentalists. Because it's true that everything is interconnected and there is always a way to do that. And it's not making it up. Like, there genuinely is a way to connect everything back to each person.
So talking about being involved in the community and acknowledging what is happening in your community and observing that, what consequence with climate change has resonated with you the most? Because
That's a great question. Yeah, what's it for you?
So for me, it's basically we have had way more intense hurricane seasons, and we are going to continue to have intense hurricane seasons if we do not get a control on what we are doing to our environment and our atmosphere.
100%.
Because as the world is heating up, there's more evaporation happening. More evaporation means that there's more air rising and more water rising, which is causing these hurricanes to become way more intense.
Yeah. The water cycle is just becoming a lot more active and powerful.
It's super ramped up right now, and it's only going to get more ramped up if we don't do something. And I know it sounds so ridiculous and people are like, well, it's just the water cycle. And it's like, no, everything is reliant on one another, like the heating and the evaporation and the rate of evaporation, and then that goes into play into wind speeds, and that plays into the temperatures, and that it just, everything is so interconnected.
That makes me think of atmospheric rivers.
And
how ludicrous those are.
They're insane.
And those getting more powerful scares me to like no end, but also fills me with awe. It's like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
And do you want to explain?
Yeah, I was about to say, let me like explain what an atmospheric river is real quick to the audience. So an atmospheric river, we have these bands that really wrap around the whole world, around the equator. And what happens is when one of them gets lifted up, it's just basically a fire hose of water that just basically wreaks havoc. And they really come over from the west coast to the east coast, from like California. They get a lot of them. Washington gets a lot of them. But what we have to acknowledge is that our weather patterns also happen west to east. So basically any kind of atmospheric river that gets up to Washington, California, it then travels across the United States. But these suckers are like packed with water.
Yeah, picture like literally the Mississippi River level of steam evaporating off of the ocean, traveling through the sky in the form of clouds and water vapor, and then dumping down. Like literally something as big as the Mississippi River, like just pouring out from the sky as rain.
And the erosion that happens from them is ludicrous.
It's wild. The thing that like I think personally resonates for me most about in terms of climate change consequences is wildfire. Reason being, I'd heard about it, right? But the first time that I ever experienced it personally, because I'm a Midwestern boy. The Midwest is like...
You don't catch on fire.
You don't catch fires in the Midwest. I mean, you do, but they're like always prescribed. They're no big deal. I helped with a couple of them, and I was like, oh, this is a wildfire. Like,
Great.
But that's so not true. They were totally controlled. And a friend of mine and I took a road trip from Illinois out to Oregon, and that was the first time that I'd really gone like west.
Okay.
In any kind of like long like overland,
Yeah.
and been like able to see
everything.
the swath of America that is the West. And so when we got to Denver, right, I remember leaving Illinois, people were like, oh my gosh, you're going to get to Denver. Like, you're going to get to see the front, the mountains, like that back the city, the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, absolutely beautiful. And then we get to Denver and they're not there because there's smoke on the horizon and you can't see any of them.
That's so heartbreaking.
And we stopped in Denver to Moab to Boise to Portland. I went up to Seattle, all these places, like these iconic cities that are like backed by mountains. Never once the entire time. That's like a 1,500-mile distance, like, or I think maybe closer to 1,000. Either way, massive distance between Denver and Portland, and barely saw mountains except for the ones that were immediately next to us.
That
because
gives
of the
me
smoke.
all the chills because that's heartbreaking.
And then this year being on the road when I started, like I started right before wildfire season. And so when I was up in like Montana and the northern Idaho for this past wildfire season, the smoke was so bad that you could only see a block away sometimes. And the fires weren't even nearby. Yeah. So it was just very, very intense. And it made me think about what would happen down the line when things like that start happening on the East Coast, other things where it could never happen. But the reality is whether you're talking about hurricanes or wildfires, you're not tracking like every single year it gets worse. It's the trend, as you know. It is a trend, yep. And so there will be some years that like aren't as bad. But overall, harsher years will happen more frequently. And that concerns me.
It concerns me drastically, especially as we get closer to that 1.5 threshold.
But it's also encouraging because as we do get closer, even though we're walking a fine line.
We are walking, literally, we are tippy-toeing on that line
so
right now.
Close. More people are getting excited and encouraged and like working to solve the problem. Yeah. Which we can talk about in more detail. But that gives me a lot of hope. I think that it's very important to tie hope into these conversations.
And that's exactly what I was just about to say is tying in hope. You do that so beautifully.
Thank you.
And that is something I appreciate because it's so easy to harp on the negative, but there is so much hope. And that hope is something that you have actually seen and that you have been a part of. And I really want you to share that hope with everyone about how the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and how you got the public involved in that. Sure. Because that to me there's so much hope in this story.
I love this story.
It's so beautiful. There's so much hope in this story that like, how could you not get jazzed and excited about our Earth and saving it?
So it was 100% like, the thing that's great about the story is like, yes, I had involvement. But the thing that's amazing is that it really took a village to pull this off. I mean, like basically the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge was slated for oil drilling during the last administration. And it was being like pushed through, like speed run into drilling without consulting the native people that lived there, the Gwich'in, without doing proper environmental assessments. And this place is beautiful. The refuge is huge, millions of acres, but the spot that we were specifically talking about was the coastal plain, this 13-mile stretch of land that was the most sensitive part of the entire place, and a spot where just so many species from all over the world go to birth their young. Like you, Grace, but also you, listener, have probably seen birds that were born in the Arctic Refuge, no matter where you are, because they host species from all the continents besides Antarctica. So it's this beautiful, beautiful spot.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like that to me, continents.
Every single one, yeah, except Antarctica.
They come to be here. Like, think about that. Continents of species coming to one location.
It's one of the greatest family reunions on Earth.
Wow.
Yeah, it's awesome.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's sacred to the people there. And obviously there's all the climate impacts of Arctic drilling. And you combine that with the fact that financially it didn't even make sense. Yeah. Because all of the major banks in like North America had said, we're not going to fund this. So it would have come from like foreign investment and not even really made the country that much money. It was a whole thing. And so it didn't make sense. And there were some public comment periods out where people could submit their opinion and try to get it emphasized to the government. Like, we do or do not want this to happen. Vast majority of people don't want it to happen.
Of course.
And so I'd been on Instagram for a long time Facebook seems determined to make Instagram worse with every update that they put out. And so I was wondering, like, is there a more actionable platform that I can get on in order to encourage people to actually do things? Because there's a lot of seeing things on the internet, but it's hard to translate that to doing things. And TikTok was brought to my attention by a friend of mine. And I started, I made a quick little diddle TikTok about the cause and everything.
Yeah.
And then Protect the Arctic, a documentary group that had made an amazing documentary on the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, reached out and was looking for a place to like share its footage. And so they turned to TikTok. I was the only person on TikTok really talking about it. And so we started working together. And then I got ushered into this amazing community of them and the other members of the Arctic Coalition and the Gwich'in, and this group of people that has been working and fighting for this for decades. And kind of just took point on the TikTok end of it, but encouraged people to have use their voice on TikTok by not only writing public comments, but also creating their own videos to share with the world. So when I was initially the only person making videos, a couple people jumped in, and we were initially writing to the Bureau of Land Management. We got 17,000 public comments in the Bureau of Land Management, and then they closed their public comment period early. So we were kind of out of options.
Yeah.
We were like, is there anything else that we could do? Because that was the
not
way.
enough. Yeah.
And it was crazy because 17,000 was already a crazy successful environmental campaign, but I mean,
you wanted more.
Yeah. So wanted to emphasize how many people care about this. And so Fish and Wildlife had a public comment period open too, not for the actual sale of leases in the refuge, but for the seismic testing process, which is the first step of oil drilling. So you're like, well, I mean, we can maybe combat the oil drilling by preventing that from happening, even if we can't prevent the sale. And so then we explained the story to the public, and we're like, hey, we were trying to go to Bureau of Land Management, as you guys know, but they closed their comment period early. So let's start right into the Fish and Wildlife period and really emphasize how much we care about this. And the next day, over 50,000 letters got in. And then
50,000 letters.
And by the end of the week, it was 100,000, which was about the time that we made the toolkit and the footage.
Yeah.
And then pumped that out because it was like, oh my gosh, there are 3 weeks left in this period. If even 9 other people do as well, if not ideally better than me, that's 1 million letters. And so continued encouraging people to make stuff and put it out there, and it just swept the platform. And in another week, we had 1 million letters, which was already so far beyond expectation.
Of course.
And then at that point, major TikTokers started getting involved in it. Like Charlie D'Amelio dropped a post about it. It ended up being the final count by the end of the comment period was 6.3 million public comments, which is the largest public comment period participation for any issue in federal history for a single comment period.
That
which
is
wild.
So beautiful.
And that's great and that's fine and all, but it doesn't really matter if it doesn't actually work.
Right.
And it did.
Woo!
Yeah. Biden, on his first day in office, this administration threw out an executive order to pause the drilling. And then a couple weeks later, the permits were nixed. So we still want permanent protection for the place to keep that from happening again. But it was a cool clutch moment to be able to.
I love that.
Yeah. Because once you start, you can't reverse that. So
yeah. So if you're listening to this and you wrote a letter,
Thank you so much. Yeah.
We really love you and we appreciate you so much.
Seriously.
I really have to know. Actually, I do know, but I really want our audience to know about what you are working on now, what your big project is, because it's beautiful. This was great. The Arctic National Refuge was so beautiful, but this is beautiful because it hits close to home for people. So I'm going to let you plug this, chug away with it, and just tell people why they need to plant a seed.
Yeah, for sure. It's a fun story. So now we're working on a fundraising campaign. We've never done a fundraiser before. And to be completely, totally transparent, I am getting paid nothing for any of this. No one is making money off of this campaign.
Which is so special.
Yeah. So that's throwing that out there right now. We we were talking as a group. We have a community Discord, like me and the community that I've established on TikTok and Instagram. And we talk about like how we can help the world and other campaigns we can do that foster tangible action. And so we're like, what's a good idea? And a couple of people really wanted to do something around community gardens, because community gardens are a phenomenal way to combat the issue of food deserts. If I know you're familiar with food deserts because we've talked about it, but for the audience, food deserts are places in the world where nutritious, healthy food is not easily accessible. So like a lot of, suburbs in America, you just go to the grocery store, but there are a lot of places like inner city neighborhoods, rural towns where your only options for food are Taco Bell, 7-Eleven, McDonald's. That's your diet. That's your only option. And so that has a really negative impact on the community. And community gardens are a great way to combat that issue and encourage, give communities fresh food that they want, that they cultivate themselves, while simultaneously also building these really positive relationships with each other and understanding a connection to food and the earth. And so we wanted to start basically as many as we can. There's this organization, Seed Money. It's one guy. His name is Roger. He's great.
Roger.
Shout out to Roger. Huge shout out to Roger.
Roger, we love you.
Because he's the bomb. And the stated purpose of Seed Money, their entire mission, is to provide grants to passionate individuals that want to start community gardens in their localities around the world. It's international. And so this campaign is raising as much money as we possibly can to make their grant budget as big as it can possibly be, while simultaneously generating interest so more people apply for said money to get a community garden for their own neighborhood.
Which I love.
And then this pot will grow as large as we can make it. And then Seed Money will review the applications that come in later in the year, in November, December, and then dole that money out to people with solid plans, tangible, actionable plans, to start community gardens in their own neighborhoods. And it
I love that.
only takes about, on average, $800 to $1,200 to $1,000 for the lumber, the soil, the tools, the seeds, everything that you need to start a garden. And then from there, it's all volunteer.
That's amazing.
So that's what we're doing right now. But the catch, the gimmick of this whole campaign, and the thing that makes it interesting, is especially with the metaphor of understanding how planting one seed can make a huge difference in the world and bring immense yields of fruit and vegetables and just goodness for the world at large. We talked back and forth about what should we make the minimum donation for this campaign? And then Roger was like, what if we made a maximum donation of $1? So, and we thought about it and we're like, that's perfect. Even
it's beautiful.
If you want to give more than $1, you can't.
Yeah.
Lucy, the 8-year-old, has as much stake in this game as Bill Gates does. A 13-year-old's dollar contributes the same financially as the millionaire's dollar. Massive equalizer. The only way that you can help more is to get more people involved.
So that is your cue, listeners. Get more people
Give $1.
involved. Give $1 and then send it to your friends, your family, your cousins, your ex-boyfriend, your ex-girlfriend. Send it to your aunt, your teacher you haven't talked to in a million years.
Yeah.
Get it out there.
This only works if we do it together. And again, Roger, everyone involved, none of us are making money on this at all. 100% of the dollars you give will go to people that want to make their communities better and foster a community garden for themselves. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And the fact that you're planting community gardens, coming from an avid gardener, I love gardening. There's something so fruitful and beautiful about growing your own fruits and vegetables and then consuming them and knowing how much love and energy and just not even just your own energy, but energy from the sun, energy from the soil. I know it sounds weird to say energy from the soil, but those roots still have to sink in and soak up all the nutrients.
100%.
And so being able to eat something that you have grown in your community and then have a community meal with everything you grew in the garden is just even more special.
It's so beautiful. I can't wait to see
it.
the tangible ways that this gets used. And I'm really thankful that we have a solid vetting process to make sure that it really gets to places that'll use it and use it well.
Good.
Because that's what life's all about. So yeah,
it is.
Give $1. guys, let's save the world together.
Give $1. Where can they give $1?
They can give $1 at dollargardens.com/donate. And you can find that link in my TikTok bio.
Yeah, and we'll put it in the description of this podcast.
Yeah, check it in the show notes.
Yep, there it is. Alex, this has been fantastic. I have one more question for you.
Bring it on.
And that would be, what advice do you have for the younger generation or anyone listening currently?
It's twofold. The first is that, like, especially understanding climate and all this stuff and how interconnected we are. First is that you're never alone and you have an entire generation at your back willing to do things with you. I mean, we've proven that once and we're proving it again now. And it's amazing to see how many of us are all on the same page. And the second thing is life is hard inherently. It is difficult. That is a given. And success is not a given. So when you're looking at the path that you want to choose for yourself, consider the difficulties of the paths in front of you and wonder which of those difficulties excite you the most. So for me with road life, right? Like, it's hard. It's rainy and wet and cold, and the wintertime is difficult when you live in a Subaru Outback. But when I was thinking about that versus, you know, trying to find a 9-to-5 during COVID, afford an apartment, all that stuff, like, that didn't excite me. Those difficulties didn't really light my fire. But being able to deal with the weather, ration food, go on these adventures, figure out how to get my car unstuck from like the desert if that ever happened, stuff like that, that excited me. That was something I was really looking forward to doing. Like, the problems that came with road life and building this career made me happy. They weren't any less difficult, but they made me excited. And so since difficulty is a given, listeners, if there's anything that if you're trying to decide between two paths, focus a little less on the not guaranteed success, because that'll be fleeting. And once you achieve it, you'll need to achieve something greater. But the difficulty will always be there. So whatever difficulty lights your fire, whatever like hardship is something you're looking excited to solve, that's the path that you should go down.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's good. That is something you guys all need to write down. I'm literally like holding on to all those words for like ever. Okay, to wrap this up, you guys know what it is. It is some rapid randomness. Alex gets to choose 5 cards, and he's going to answer 5 questions, and we'll see what he says.
Let's do it. Let's do it. So ready.
It's been said that worry is a misuse of imagination. What do you think about worry?
I think it's not worthwhile.
I agree.
Yeah.
How did you meet your closest friends?
Oh my gosh. That's such a hard question. I mean, one of my closest friends is Lewis, right outside. We met in preschool.
That's literally
We've been friends
so
since we were like 3 years old. I think we
Aw.
shared Legos on a playmat or something.
I'm sure that's what it was.
Yeah.
Friends for life.
Friends for life.
What comes easily to you?
Bonding with people.
I believe that.
Yeah.
When have you been underestimated?
Definitely like when starting this whole thing off, I was like, I think actually, well, I guess this is a rapid randomness question, so I'll answer it super, super fast. But when starting my creative career, I think a lot of creatives go through this where they like have so much passion for the world and ideas and things, but you haven't been recognized yet. Like, you haven't been accepted into the professional community. And so probably, I mean, I was at this like 6 years before it like really started taking off with road life. So like that whole time, I was confident and excited, but also was rejected on a very regular basis. And so felt underestimated then for sure.
What building or place was important to you that doesn't exist now?
There was an abandoned building in Chicago that I won't point out specifically for obvious reasons, but there was a building in Chicago that when I started photography, we would do like urban exploration and that like all the time. And there was a place that we went to where you could go to the top of it and just look out and see the entire city. And
How
it was
beautiful.
It was so gorgeous. And yeah, we romped around that when we were like, 18, 19, whatever. But
you were cool.
Yeah, I thought we were the coolest kids on the block.
I feel that.
But it's gone now. So there were a lot of really, really special memories there and good conversations that definitely like came, that Ed Sheeran song Castle on the Hill, where it's like, these people raised me.
Yeah.
A lot of those memories are there, and it's gone now, but it holds a very special place in our heart.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so sweet. Alex, thank you so much for joining us. Anything that you want to plug your socials so people can find you. They'll also be in the show notes for people. But give them the rundown.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
You can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at alex.hauraus, which is spelled Haraus. It's Ukrainian. And you can check me out on YouTube under the same name. Since I don't make any money off of these campaigns, if you want to support the work that I do financially, and keep this sort of thing going into the future, you can also check me out on Patreon.
I love that. Thank you so much, Alex, for joining us. You guys know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you loved about this podcast. Share it with your friend, your neighbor, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, your ex, all those great people in your life. And, post your favorite part on your Instagram story so we can share it with
and
the
then
rest
give a
of the
dollar.
world. Yes, and then give $1 while you're at it. Give $1 to plant a community garden. Thank you so much, Alex, again, and we will see you all next week.